All right, what's up, everybody? We're here after the Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez. This is the post-fight show and reaction. We have a few great guests that will be joining us in just a few minutes. Until then, there's, of course, initial reaction. That's Ricky Strom. I'm Jason.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Jason.
Hello, Richard. Spoiler alert, it was a draw. If you are coming into the channel, look, here's the one thing I can't stand is if someone sees post-fight show and reaction and they go, well, we didn't think you were going to give us the result.
Where are the highlights?
Sorry, brother. Sorry.
Not happening.
There won't be highlights. We are not HBO boxing.
We can't afford it.
The judges' scorecards, 118-110 to Canelo, which is scary as to what went down in that judge's mind. Adelaide Bird.
Adelaide Bird, yes.
115-113 to Golovkin.
115-113 for Golovkin, correct.
114-114, which led to the draw decision.
Yes.
Obviously, this fight needs to be rewatched, but in terms of
how about rescored?
Rescored. Well, the 118.
Let's try that as well.
The 118-110, absolutely. 115-113, 114-114. There's not much room for error necessarily off of what they're seeing, and there's always as to what. We don't know exactly as to what goes through these judges' minds. Now, a draw, of course, leads to a rematch. It wouldn't have mattered if someone was declared a winner. There would have, I thought, been a rematch regardless because, of course, the money. And we actually got a fight that, if you want to talk about necessarily living up to the hype or just in general sheer enjoyment of watching this sport, you might not ever get as much of a masterclass thrown for a loop as we were. From the difference, the stark difference in rounds 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12 was like watching 3 entirely different boxing
I agree with that.
And I'm gonna throw to you, Rick, because my reaction was I thought GGG. I tweeted out I thought GGG won by an inch. That was my reaction.
I agree.
An inch.
Firstly, thank you all for watching. Send all of your thoughts in the comments section. We're gonna get to as many as we can. I have my computer up just for us to read the comments. First things first, Adelaide Bird should never, ever, ever judge another title fight ever again, ever. Now, she had Amir Khan ahead right before Amir Khan got knocked the fuck out by Canelo Alvarez. He was not ahead. She has scored some shamockery decisions that have not only hurt the sport of boxing, but have also hurt the sport of mixed martial arts. She has shown her fuckery so many times that now a 118-110 score, I mean, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So she gave Gennady Golovkin 2 rounds, 2. What was she watching? And if there was a competent judge in there, I believe that Gennady Golovkin would have got what I believe was a narrow, not a wide, not a 118-110, not a 116-112. It would have been a nice, fair decision for a 35-year-old that did not even get broadcasted in the United States until probably about 5 years ago. He has deserved this moment, but not only that, he proved how technical of a fighter he could be, how he can take punch after punch after punch, hook after hook after hook, power punch after power punch, and jab after jab from Canelo Alvarez, who arguably, first time fighting at exactly 160, he fought above when he faced Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Taking those shots over and over again, he deserved this win and did not deserve a draw. Now, I personally thought, I'm like, it's Vegas. Like, this is going to happen. Right when it went to a decision, I thought, Canelo is 27, he's in his prime. There's no way the judges are not going to give this to Canelo. So glass half full, it wasn't a pure boxing decision. It's like when the Tennessee Volunteers are ahead or even down by a little and they're inside the opponent's 5-yard line, you know they're gonna screw it up. It was the complete opposite. Where the outcome that we thought was going to happen actually didn't happen, but I'm still left befuddled at what exactly some of the judges saw. Like 115-113 I'm okay with. 114-114, I saw Marcus Villegas of Fight Hub TV say, it could be a draw, and I'm okay with that. But to have 118-110, how can the Nevada State Athletic Commission continue to fuck us over as boxing fans over and over and over again by putting incompetent judges in arguably the biggest boxing match of the year.
That's the argument.
It doesn't matter if you thought Mayweather and McGregor was the biggest one. It wasn't. It was with the gate. In terms of pure boxing and the sweet science and the purity of it, this was it. And to see Gennady Golovkin get hosed out of a decision is a shamockery, to say the least. And I'm incredibly disappointed, Jason, because he deserves better than this and we deserve better than this.
I agree with the deserving of better in terms of boxing needing this fight to have a decision, because big is a vague word. I'm not. I don't want to even discuss Mayweather McGregor because it's offensive to discuss Mayweather McGregor in light of a Golovkin versus Alvarez fight. And I don't think there's a comparison between what is an actual sweet science and what is spectacle. Obviously, I'm in favor of the spectacle being Mayweather and the science being Golovkin versus Alvarez. Roughly 10 times more people probably watched Mayweather McGregor, which is sad because the spectacle sells, the circus sells. People rather join the circus than sit and actually watch or maybe learn something from watching the two, I don't want to say best fighters, but the two best matched fighters, because Andre Ward is pound for pound #1.
Yes.
So obviously the two best fighters can't be in the ring together unless there's some form of catchweight. My point being in the Golovkin-Alvarez cases, if it was a different judge and it was, I don't know how you score. I don't know how, in what world you can score Canelo.
118, 110.
118, 110. 116 is a stretch. Especially when, like, you look, fight stats are one thing, watching is obviously different, but they landed the same amount of power punches. Golovkin landed 114, Canelo landed 110. But percentage-wise, Canelo threw over 300 and Golovkin threw under 280. Canelo landed 32%, Golovkin landed 42%, and a lot of those 42%, and this is very, very important, came on a counter from Canelo's own power punches. Yeah. And that's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. The other thing I wanted to highlight is I don't think that Nevada State Athletic Commission and the judges being chosen, even in the second fight, will ever let Golovkin win, even if it was pure dominance rounds 1 through 12, unless Golovkin knocks him down or knocks him out. Because Canelo threw a sweeping right hook in the 9th or 10th round.
I thought it was the 8th.
It might have been the 8th round.
Somewhere in there.
That I promise you, every single one of Canelo's previous opponents would have been wobbled around the ground and it did fucking nothing.
They would have been asleep.
It did nothing to Golovkin, and that is shocking by all accords, and it just, I don't want to sound bitter because for a fight that my jaw was on the ground as for something, the phone booth fighting, as we mentioned.
Later in the fight.
Such enjoyment to be derailed.
It was boxing porn, Jason.
It was boxing porn.
It was boxing porn.
To be derailed by such horseshit, Stevie Wonder-esque fucking judges is what crushes me. It just does, because it's something, it's not closure. And I don't, a lot of people say the second fight, this second installment, right? Now we get another fight, all the money. I don't think it will be as good as this fight. I don't want to undersell it, but now these two know a lot more about each other than they knew before.
What I personally don't like is that Gennady Golovkin is 35.
Yeah, he's gonna be 36
he's going to be,
fights.
He's going to be 36 the next time that they fight.
If they can agree.
He showed, however, he showed so many people like Carl Froch, like a few others as well, that said that he was an aged fighter and he's been in too many wars to get knocked out by Canelo. I didn't buy that Gennady Golovkin was old. We all knew that he was 35. I was more so buying into, I think Canelo had more tools. But what we saw was
all of them in the 12th round, first 30 seconds.
In the first 3 rounds, it was arguably all Canelo. And the reason being was because Canelo's timing was very accurate. It stopped Golovkin in his tracks. We know that Canelo wants to be the counterpuncher in almost every single fight that he has.
Shots.
However, what he would do is, and if Canelo could only condition and have that energy that he had in the first 3 rounds, similarly to what he had against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., where it seemed like he'd never tired, he would have won this fight, because there's a certain sort of, what's the word? There's a certain sort of pace that he has, where he has the energy to feint over and over and then double up on a jab and throw an over-the-top right. And there were many moments where it seemed like he was going to throw an uppercut that Daniel Jacobs threw, that a few others threw against Gennady Golovkin, and they landed. Granted, they didn't put Golovkin on his ass. It's because Golovkin has arguably one of the best chins we've ever seen in boxing.
I don't think Golovkin will ever end up on his ass until he's 40 years old after seeing what Canelo threw at him. That sweeping right hook displaced James Kirkland's jaw. I've said this multiple
James Kirkland was a broken fighter, though. Let's call a spade a spade. At that point, he didn't have Ann Wolfe as his trainer, who had such an impact on him that it's sort of like if you take Phil Jackson off of the Bulls.
We see what happens. It displaced his jaw. It displaced it 1.5 inches to the left. That's how much
and
power.
Then it just came back in.
Yeah,
it's like an agent with the Matrix.
Every action has a.
It's just like it just bounces right back in.
We should get to some of to our guests.
Yes,
because we have a few of them, and I really want to hear an outside perspective to cheer me up. I hope.
Alrighty. It is a pleasure to welcome in Robert Exel of Boxing.com. Robert and I go way, way back in 2011, so it is a pleasure to have him once again. You can catch all of his stuff on his website, Boxing.com. Robert, are you with us? Can you hear us?
And how are you?
Alrighty. Real quick, we cannot hear Robert in the studio, so let's just take
a speaker we can use.
Let's take a second here. Robert, you look great. I just got to say that. But unfortunately, we just still can't hear you. Robert, try one more time.
Yes, I'm good. I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
No, we still can't hear him. Okay, just come back to Jason and I while we figure out the kinks here.
The live stream.
Yeah, it's a live stream. You know, this shit happens.
He does look good.
But he looks great. The lighting looks great and everything. Please continue to send in your comments, by the way, in the comments section, who you believe won. Do you believe that this was a robbery? Your thoughts on Adelaide Bird? Your thoughts on if you think that this fight could happen next year over the Cinco de Mayo weekend, which I believe should. Do you think it should happen? Yeah, there is no choice.
It would be daylight robbery to have it send in a draw and then there'd be no answer.
And here's the other thing, real quick. Whoever wins that fight, there should be a trilogy, depending on how one-sided it is.
When Golovkin is 39 years old.
39. I will fight anybody.
Golovkin will have to send his younger brother to fight him. Just in general, this is how much a decision could just absolutely, use the same word, derail what would have been, I guess, controversial. If you gave it the decision to Canelo, there would have been disagreement and a rematch. If you gave it to Golovkin, who I now am in firm belief, I will, and I think I'll always be, if he doesn't knock him out, there is no chance.
Yeah, we could watch it next week. You're going to come to the same conclusion. That here's what you'll think. Either Golovkin won by an inch or he won by a mile.
That's the only two outcomes. That might not necessarily be true, because you rewatch fights and your perspective can change because you get the ability.
I understand. I
rewatch it round by round. You have to watch it without sound, which I find to be the most important way to watch a fight.
I'm telling you, I already feel regret that I gave Canelo as many rounds as he had, or as many rounds as I believed he had. Yeah, why don't you put it in your IFB so you can hear him?
Do you have one in?
I do not have one.
Well, then here. Well, you're going to be talking directly to the man.
All right, fine, let's do it.
Look, we're keeping it very real on
seriously.
We might even keep it on the desk. This is called an IFB, ladies and gentlemen, for the YouTube live stream.
This is all part of the master plan of the live stream, ladies and gentlemen.
We hear our guests speak. We're very real about it. And because without these wonderful machines, we would have no idea what he was saying.
That's very true.
Our reaction would be this.
That's very true.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
And then we just like pretend to try and make out what he's saying. Real quick, what would be the best next fight if they didn't fight each other? Or is it almost mandatory in your eyes that they have to fight one another?
Best next fight doesn't exist because it will be, again, the biggest travesty of my lifetime in boxing. I am a youngin', so obviously.
Right, what would be the travesty? I don't understand.
The travesty is there never being an outcome for these two because the scorecard fucked it.
As long as they don't have Adelaide Bird, and I will take this to the grave at this point, as long as they don't have Adelaide Bird and corrupt judges going on not only pay-per-view, but just overall ruining the lives of so many professional boxers, because all it takes, not necessarily, well, it can take one punch, it could take one decision. That's all it takes to derail a fighter's career and livelihood. Luckily, they made $3 million and $5 million respectively. $3 million for Gennady, $5 million for Canelo. So it seems like they're going to be fine. Real quick.
Wait, I'm sorry. How much? 3-5.
Off the bat, 3-5. Real
Conor
quick.
got 100.
Okay, we're good. Real quick, 19 title defenses now for Gennady Golovkin as we welcome in Robert Exel, the editor-in-chief of boxing.com. Robert, let's try one more time. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Fantastic.
All right.
Yes, sir, I can. Firstly, it is a pleasure to speak with you once again. It's been way too long, so I appreciate you joining us here on TYT Sports. Real quick, did you have it in favor of Gennady Golovkin? Do you believe that a draw was necessary between what we just saw in Las Vegas?
Of course, I scored it for Golovkin. I mean, there was no question that he won the fight. It was close, sort of. I mean, I had 7 rounds to 5 in favor of Golovkin, but I felt as though the decision was less a robbery than an inevitability. Because of Golovkin's age, because of his nationality, because of his appeal, particularly south of the border, he would have had to have been carried out of the ring in order for Golovkin to get the victory.
Are you more, Robert, real quick, allow me to interject. Are you more so surprised, because I'm in complete agreement with you, are you more so surprised that the decision did not go for Canelo because of all the factors that you just stated? Gennady Golovkin being the older fighter, being from not a neighbor to the United States from the South, and knowing that he's with K2 Promotions and not a head honcho like Golden Boy. Wouldn't that be just a little bit more surprising?
Yes, if they could have given it to Golovkin without being sort of laughed, off the face of the sports pages. People have very low expectations for boxing, and it's really a pity, because boxing doesn't help raise expectations. And this decision, of course, is evidence of that. There is no real resolution between the two of them. They will fight again, perhaps it'll be a draw again. What we'll see is a sort of recycling of the enthusiasm that has since waned once the decision was announced. It was a good fight. It was a really an excellent fight, but it was not a fight for the ages. And even the need for a rematch is questionable to me.
And I'm just curious, how did you have it? How did you have it scored? A lot of, from what I saw on Twitter, a lot of people had it 7-5 in favor of Golovkin. I wouldn't be surprised if many people gave him 8 rounds as well. How exactly did you score it?
I gave him the first 3 rounds. I mean, that seemed really obvious. Harold Letterman giving Golovkin that opening round seemed absurd. I gave him the first 3 rounds, and then I believe I gave him the last 2 rounds, or the 10th and the 11th. Anyway, it was 2 of the championship rounds I gave to Canelo. He fought a great fight, but what happened was when he saw his opponent, sort of brush off the best punches he could throw and land, I could feel like his key dropped out of him, because he was simply a smaller man fighting a bigger man, and his punches that were had proven so devastating in the past really simply had no effect at all on Golovkin.
So Robert, do you think that the power displayed, to your point, saying it brushed off, they still obviously count as power punches landed, but at least when I'm coming away from this too, and I want to go backtrack really quickly first, you said in the beginning, you don't feel like there needs to necessarily be a rematch. Is that more because you think boxing purists in general know that Golovkin was rightfully the winner of this fight, or is it something that could be left as a draw and there's just better fights to be made with these two moving forward, Canelo respectively and Golovkin respectively?
I would go with the latter. I mean, I think there are better fights out there for them. I mean, there's really, if they fight again, there's no way Canelo is going to win this time. I mean, he simply is, he is really a junior middleweight, fighting a genuine middleweight, and his power is ineffective against somebody who has a good chin, as Golovkin of course does, but who's also really, perhaps a better fighter when bottom line, when you come down to it. I think that's the truth of the matter.
Robert, we've seen Adelaide Bird have many controversial decisions previously. Amir Khan was the one that came to mind with me personally when she had Amir Khan against Canelo Alvarez, let me explain. She had Amir Khan up prior to getting knocked out, I believe it was 48-47. What other decisions can you possibly remember of note, at least, where she had a controversial decision, and should this be her last fight on a major boxing match?
Nothing comes to mind, but no, it should not be her last fight. I mean, this is not really like CJ Ross. Yet in some ways it is like CJ Ross. I mean, I think nobody really got to Adelaide Bird before the fight and said, you've got to score this fight, in favor of Canelo and explain the reasons why. I mean, none of that is really necessary. But the system is set up as a business. I mean, boxing is a business, and we lovers of sport, we lovers of boxing, we cling to a kind of a notion of purity. That these athletes are pure, and the purity of competition, and the purity of this, and the purity of that, and the purity of the other thing. But they're fighting for money. I mean, they both made a really nice. We both got a really nice payday for a single night of work, and that's what matters to these men. They both know it. The fans don't know it, and nobody's really going to tell the fans that that's the case. But where is it not the case, and when is it not the case? I can't think of any examples.
I mean, I can't think of any other decision that would draw more headlines than this specific decision. Of course, if they gave it to Canelo, in one sense, there would be the, I think, understandable outcries that Triple G won the fight. And if they gave it to Triple G, there's still the Canelo fan base. But the draw is what's gonna, in the end, cause a lot of, I guess it's like an earthquake. It's not the earthquake, what's it called when it happens overseas? An earthquake on the water and it starts to ripple, the ripple effect, that's what I'm looking for, thank you, ripple effect. That it's gonna drag on for a couple more weeks, and they want this to happen in general, because the headlines in themselves are what keeps generating the interest. And I don't know, it's just, I feel personally that I just like all of the excitement of that fight and the best parts of it just kind of got ripped away watching those judges' scorecards being read. And that's possibly my youth speaking, not being and having seen nearly as many fights as I wish I had, and watching a lot back on tape in themselves. But I don't know, that's just my gut reaction, is that there's something feels unfinished. And I wanted more than just that answer of, not from you, I'm saying from the judges, of there being a decision besides a draw. Maybe I should have bet on the draw.
Well, I certainly understand your feelings. I mean, completely. I mean, there is this feeling of sort of incompleteness. I mean, sort of inadequacy. But part of that actually, I think, goes to the fight itself. I mean, the superlatives have been flying fast and furious ever since this fight was announced, and frankly, it didn't live up to its potential. It was a good fight. It wasn't a great fight. It wasn't instant history. It wasn't Hagler or Leonard. I mean, they're going to take us. I mean, people will take us wherever they need to take us in order to get us to tune in. But in point of fact, the fight itself was disappointing. It didn't live up to its potential. So I think that acts as an overlay. And then the business with Adelaide Bird and the judges and the decision and whether they should fight again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is in a way really serves no purpose, because there's a new fight on the horizon. There's always a new fight on the horizon. Mm-hmm. It's like the sun rises and the sun sets, and there's a new fight on the horizon, and this fight will be forgotten until such time as they decide to fight again, and at which point everybody who viewed the fight will have forgotten the results and how they felt after the fight, and things will proceed full speed ahead until the next repeat of the same systematic approach.
Robert, 19 title defenses now for Gennady Golovkin. Bernard Hopkins, of course, has the record with 20. What has made Golovkin so impressive as he continues to put up not one, but many titles on every single bout? Was it the comfiness of the schedule of fights that he had, or was it just the sheer dominance that he showed us and displayed to us time and time again?
Well, it was the dominance. It was the fact that he had power, but he also had, really some wonderful boxing gifts. He was able to cut off the ring. He's able to, he relies on a jab. I mean, which is a forgotten punch, and yet it sets up everything. Right. He's a wonderful talent, an enormous talent, and of course this amazing personality, because you have, this sort of cold-eyed killer in the ring on one hand, and when the fight is over, he's all smiles, joy to the world, peace on earth. I mean, it's a wonderful contrast. But he's not Mexican. I don't know.
He loves his style, though, Robert.
I don't know how big the Kazakh, fight fan base is, but he is not Mexican, and it has worked against him. But he's an enormous talent and a real positive addition to the sport, in my opinion.
I want to make one quick correction. 42% power punches landed for Canelo Alvarez, 32% for Golovkin. I had it reversed before, and that's a very important metric just because I don't want to have the wrong information. That's what I was furiously checking out on my phone to be like,
worries.
I can't tell, I got to look quicker. That was just power punches though. I don't know what the exact numbers were. I think if I saw correctly, but I'm not gonna even repeat them. There was the total punch stats were different than that, of course. Right. I like Robert's clairvoyant steering of my emotional disastrous ship to the horizon of there being more fights. It's been wonderful.
Robert, real quick, I got a few questions for you on the live stream. So young Pulla says, what makes this fight so much better than a Floyd Mayweather fight?
Well, it would depend on which Floyd Mayweather fight you're referring to.
Let's say
I mean, if it were the last Mayweather fight, we would have to sort of that would be very specific. So I don't know exactly how to answer it, but we might as well rely on the last fight. Unlike Mayweather's last fight, which was very entertaining, more entertaining than I was expecting it to be. Yep. It was essentially scripted. I mean, Mayweather. I mean, it was scripted. Mayweather knew the script. His opponent did not know the script. So the opponent simply relied on instinct, punched himself out after 3 rounds. Mayweather took over, administered a beating, and that was that. It wasn't a competitive fight. Neither man is at the top of his game. McGregor is not even in his game. I mean, he's an MMA fighter, and I'm fighting in a boxing ring. So, very, very different fights. Again, with this fight, you really had two fighters at or near the top of their game with similar assets and liabilities. But again, size matters. And in this case, Golovkin's size especially mattered.
All right, Robert, got one more for you. Jeffrey Wittig. And I guess this goes for either one because Billy Joe Saunders defeated Eugene Monroe earlier today. Now, the headline from ESPN.com, along with many other outlets and even on Twitter, was Billy Joe Saunders should get the winner before we even knew it would be a draw between Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez. Now, the question is, for either one of them, should one of them, if a rematch does not happen, so let me just frame it this way, should one of them have to face Billy Joe Saunders?
It wouldn't be a matter of having to face him. It would be a matter of whether or not the negotiations, because he has a WBO belt and all the other belts are sort of divided between the other two fighters. So it wouldn't be a question of having to. I mean, in addition to the belt being like the least distinguished of the belts, and it's not a particularly distinguished lot to begin with. The only advantage would be that it's a chance to unify all the titles, which is a rare thing. Any way you cut it, those are really rare things. So they wouldn't have to do it. It really becomes a series of negotiations, whether or not they can come to terms. Do I think that Billy Joe Saunders can beat either one of them? No, I don't.
Thank you.
I agree with that
answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Robert, we'll keep you for one more. And I think this is actually a pretty good question. Ricardo Loza says, how do we all feel about a part 2 of this fight? We're getting a lot of questions. Axel's even saying, do you want to see a rematch? Jason, let me just turn to you before we go to Robert. Do you want to see a rematch? Yes or no?
Yes, because I think again, a lot of my influence, how I'm influenced with these fights and how it influences boxing staying in a more premier spotlight, I think is always going to be important. I think boxing's had a terrific year, and I think the schedule remaining for boxing is going to be terrific. especially the Loma Rigondeaux fight at the end. And I believe that's at Madison Square Garden also, which I think is going to be a wonderful stage. No New York bias from there on my side, I promise. But in
He's
general,
a New Yorker too.
That's good. Good man, Robert Exel. On top of that, I think when you have these two that being the two biggest, two of the biggest names in the sport, and of course the pound for pound #1 and Andre Ward going next year, I'm assuming too. It's good to see it in the spotlight, and you do need big names to carry that, and these are two of those biggest names. So I would just like to see the completed work. I do believe, having said all of that, it's not as good of a fight as this one was, because there's always the mysterious factor, and as to Robert's point earlier in this clip, in this stream, I think Golovkin would come out also as well, and it would be more decisive than it was this time, if the judges will see it that way.
Real quick, I want to save the best for last, which is Robert, obviously. Yes, I want to see a rematch. I badly want to see a rematch. I would like to see it sooner rather than later, because again, as we established,
tomorrow. I want to see it tomorrow.
Yeah, I want to see it tomorrow. I want to see it in like 2 hours. But obviously, we all know it's not going to happen. Gennady Golovkin's going to be 36. Yeah. Canelo's going to be 28. The sooner this happens, the better. And what is it right now? September. If they were to fight in January, which would not happen, I'd be all in favor of it.
April, May.
No, not even April, May. Like do January, February, and try to give us something. But again, it's only going to happen over May.
That's what you want.
Of course, it's Cinco de Mayo weekend. Canelo Alvarez is only going to fight over Cinco de Mayo weekend if it is a rematch. So, absolutely, yes, I want to see a rematch. Robert, what say you, sir?
I also want to see the rematch, but it's nothing that I'm really going to sort of be yearning for. I really want to sort of rewatch tonight's fight, let it sink in exactly what I saw, think about it somewhat, write about it a bit, bring some clarity to it, and then I'll see. I'll check my enthusiasm meter and see where we go from there.
Alrighty, Robert Exel, the editor-in-chief of Boxing.com. Robert, again, an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you once again, and let's do it again soon.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Robert.
Alrighty, the live stream continues here on TYT Sports. If you are just joining us, spoiler alert, Gennady Golovkin did not win. Canelo Alvarez did not win. It was a draw. What was that?
I want to throw out one other fighting game news. Two things. Sure. It looks like the crowd was obviously displeased. Luke Rockhold.
Everyone was displeased.
Luke Rockhold with a TKO over David Branch at UFC Pittsburgh, which is good for Luke Rockhold.
Very good for Luke Rockhold.
Just all fighting game round. You said Billy Joe Saunders won tonight. Lots of good stuff in the fight game, aside from the draw.
Very much so.
I can't believe I didn't bet the draw.
Yeah, you can.
I can't believe I didn't.
No, I can.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. The entire week, all I heard from you was, man, I'm gonna bet Canelo win and Canelo even round knockout. And like, it's what you said every single
but just like
day.
Every time there's a draw in boxing and it's like 90-1, and you're sitting there going like, God, I'm an idiot. I bet the draw in Mayweather McGregor just out of complete BS throwaway.
Taking the draw is like betting the under. Like you're rooting for something that is boring and you don't want to happen.
Good bettors bet the under.
No, losers bet the under.
No, wrong.
Losers.
So you're in the 40% who lose money on the over?
I'm just saying, you bet the under, you're rooting for punts in football.
Of course.
That's
Not
boring.
Necessarily.
That's boring.
Unless your under's like 13.5.
Everything is boring about that.
Fair enough. The unders for a lot of sports, just so you know, like 45.5 points. Like that's not an under. That just means you're hoping for 27-20.
Yeah, it's boring.
27-20 is boring to you?
27-20.
For someone who loves Floyd Mayweather's defensive fighting, you would think that the under would be something you would flow with. Because
you would think it would appease me.
To your point, offense should not appease you as much as it does.
It shouldn't.
But it does.
But it does in other terms other than
you don't like a classic 6-3 Seahawks. Broncos.
You're kidding? I'm watching it with the Bears right now. That's all the Bears are going to do this
scored more points than the Giants did. But back to the Alvarez Golovkin. It's so tough because I really want to rewatch it now. Like I want to be watching it while we watch it.
I'm sure you can.
And a lot of that is because I feel like in general fight game reaction. This is so much different than Mayweather-McGregor, obviously for boxing reasons.
Can we just view that, by the way, as a complete separation from everything else we've seen in boxing?
I can, but it's just so easy to react to McGregor-Mayweather because you knew more. As
but
Robert
it's also
said,
bullshit to compare everything to Mayweather.
I'm not
I know you're not.
it.
I'm saying from the general consensus of boxing fans and fighting fans, everything that they're going to see from here on out is going to be a bad, irrational comparison.
Ward versus Kovalev. Ward obviously won that fight, even if it was going to go longer.
Even if Sergey Kovalev left that fight with 0 balls.
Right. I know there was some low blows. I think it was only one of the 3 on that final TKO to the body. One of those 3.
Well, the other 50 in the fight.
There was about 40. Yeah, you're right. There's about 50.
It's bad.
Low blows. My point being though is like the reaction was so much more geared towards low blows. Was Ward this? Is Ward pound for pound #1? How could you not with all this that he's shown? This fight, I'm sure the comment section is on fire with how much we know about boxing because nobody could officially or should officially have their set reaction. Everybody should be watching it twice. Every single boxing fight that I talk about.
A lot of the comments are just about the draw, by the way.
Yeah,
it's all about the draw.
Of course, that's a takeaway. If you watch the sport, you have to watch the fight without sound. It's the single most important way to watch it the second time too.
I agree completely.
And you need to score it round by round, and you really should watch with more than a 1-minute break between rounds. Because in boxing, it doesn't matter how much better you looked in round 2 compared to round 1, it matters that they're separate. And you can win by score. So in this case, again, my rapid reaction is GGG by an inch.
Yes.
Some have it by a mile. Oscar De La Hoya's people have it by
Canelo by a mile.
Canelo by a mile, which again, the 118 I think is ridiculous. I think the farthest you can go up on Canelo, if that's justifiable, I guess would be 116 to 112. I think, because 115, 113 to Golovkin sounds right. 114, 114 also sounds kind of possibly right. It's just that one card, and it's going to stick out forever. Because let's replace that with any competent judge.
Right.
Is it 114,
Anybody.
114? Because if it's 114, 114, 115, 113, 114, 114.
Right, I'm fine with that. But the fact is, there's now this dark cloud hanging over 1/3, and the third being the hierarchy that controls the outcome of the entire brilliant boxing match that we saw between 2 warriors.
Right.
That now you don't really know what could have possibly happened, and it's dangerous to do it because we're dipping into the unknown. But if there was someone half as competent, I'm sorry, not half as competent, who is more competent than Adelaide Bird, there would have been, I believe, a better decision than 118, 110. She gave Gennady Golovkin 2 fucking rounds. I mean, come on. What fight are you possibly watching that you gave somebody that it seems like the consensus was by a nose, and we know about noses, by a nose won the fight, and yet somehow, some way you found a way to screw him and only give him 2 rounds, which it just seems is completely absurd.
I know, like look, maybe I'm going down the rabbit hole here, but I do not think it is possible for a judge, for one of those judges or 2 of those judges to give Golovkin a decision, to have him win by decision if he doesn't.
But I think Robert touched on something really important. It's the fact that he's 35.
It's worse for the sport if Golovkin wins. They need Canelo to be around for 7 more years. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's denying his following. But what is necessary? What is stopping?
Weirdly, with a draw, you felt like he lost, right?
Of course, it feels like he lost. What is stopping Golovkin from fighting for 3 or 4 more years? Not much.
Time.
Of course, time. But at the same time, nobody likes to get hit more than Golovkin. I swear to God, him and the punching bag switch places when he trains. He is the bag. Somebody hits him over and over and over and over and over again, and he just sits there and he fucking smiles. He smiles until the punching bags get messed up and sad and they want to leave their job.
There was something impressive about Golovkin once again, and it was his chin. And he has shown us so many times that through the Curtis Stevens fight, through many others, through the Daniel Jacobs fight even. If you haven't watched it, please go back and watch that. He took thudding blows. And again, the one punch that Jason Rubin literally had me pull out my phone and record.
Did you send it to me?
I didn't. If you'd like me to, I will.
I want to put it on Twitter.
It was, you better be careful, big dog. Twitter's coming after you.
They're coming after me?
They're coming after you.
Coming after me?
Yeah.
They might come after me.
The storks are coming after you.
I'm gonna put it on TYT Sports Twitter then. Ja'Cory, get a Twitter.
Is he not on Twitter?
Yeah, you won't get a Twitter. Because he's
probably
smart, because Twitter's the worst, greatest thing ever created, but there's a lot of emphasis.
The worst, greatest thing.
It is.
That is an oxymoron.
It's the worst, greatest thing. There's never been such a social media invention that can get you fired quicker than Twitter. Literally nothing.
Or make you president.
I can tweet 140 characters and be fired right now. There's never been.
Depending on what you say, yeah, sure.
But mostly Twitter, here's the reason why Twitter can be the worst, greatest thing that's ever created. For one, everybody takes everything out of context. So when you give 140 characters, which has never been in the history of time, enough.
Can you imagine having to write a letter, like when they would send them on horseback and being like, this is 152 characters, we now burn it with the witches.
That's my big thing with.
Like Alexander Hamilton, can you imagine if every song was 140 characters or less?
You realize that we signed the Declaration of Independence, like, yeah, fuck you guys. We send it back. We're partying for like 3 months. We don't even know if the boat got there. And then they got to send back like word to say that they actually got it. So they send back word and like 6 months later, we're like, oh, dude, thank God. What if they said no?
Right.
They did kind of say no. We just had a war. But in the end, we had multiple wars.
Do you remember the name of the drink? Speaking of Civil War, do you remember the name of the drink? Whoa, that
you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. There we go. The name of the drink in South Park that Cartman and the South had to drink in order to continue fighting.
No, I don't, but I do remember there's
Schmorschnaps.
Schmorschnaps.
Hey, what happened to the Schmorschnaps?
I like when, Cartman becomes the general of the South, right? The Confederacy, and they change.
Cartman is the general, and Jimbo is the one. Yeah, what's the Schmorschnaps?
Why do we have to lose?
Right.
Because that's what happened. What if we win? Yeah, man.
Remember when the Game of Thrones creators wanted to make a new show on what if the South won?
I have no problem with that. A lot of people, I know that was a ridiculously hot take from a lot of people across the interwebs, depending on where you lean politically. How do you judge a show on its concept without ever seeing a single piece of the footage? I get it, it's a charged thing to do. It's obviously something that might not sit well with people, but you're judging a book by its cover, and it doesn't have Ann Coulter on the cover.
24 Savage just wrote, how did we get on this?
I have no idea. But my point being is they wanted to make a show as what if the South won the war? Hold on, we have tons of shows of what if the Third Reich stayed in power. It's called The Man in the High Castle.
We literally do what if challenges.
I know,
on TYT, but it's like a little extreme.
You realize The Man in the High Castle is no difference than what if the South won the war.
Speaking of the South,
zero difference.
How am I going to?
No problem with it.
Speaking of the South, how am I going to know who lost now that the Robert E. Lee statue has been taken down?
Read a book.
Oh, right.
Books. They keep your consensus. I like the idea of having
something that Paul Ryan has no idea.
Did you see? No, he's never read a book. Did you ever see?
He's spineless.
The idea for LeBron James to be dunking over all the Confederate statues. If you want to keep them, it's fine. It just has to be. I read a book twice, Ja'Cory. I only got through half of each, which makes one book. I got through one half of The Art of War and then one half of Mice and Men, and combining them causes a lot of problems. Wow.
It's not Of Mice and Men.
It's Of Mice and Men.
Oh yeah. I was thinking of
read a book.
Thinking of the book.
Speaking of read a book.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of the band, which is also called Of Mice and Men. Is it not?
They're the folk kind of band, folk rock band. They're pretty good.
They're the and the birds said to the bees, and everyone was happy.
I think I've only know the radio songs.
Whatever. What were we talking about again?
Golovkin, Alvarez, but we're almost out of. I'm sapped. I'm sapped from the fight.
All right.
This thing is fucking everywhere. I'm sitting on it. Sorry, guys. Look, we're do you want the real TYT?
Oh, here's what I was gonna say. That was look. I've done a lot of reading in my day.
I've read
one of the saddest books I ever read was Of Mice and Men.
It's one of my favorite. It's a really good book. I like that book.
It was sad.
It's very sad.
It was super sad.
See,
you heard of super bad?
This was
super sad.
The thing with Of Mice and Men, it's like the OG American dream, which, by the way, that does not exist anymore. It's the original American dream.
Getting shot is the American dream.
Oh my God! For a book that you said you read, the whole idea was to own land. The whole idea was to have a piece.
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying. Come on. I'm cutting out the fat of the story and getting to the end here.
Yeah, why?
Sorry, spoiler alert.
Why are you ruining it for the people who will never read Of Mice and Men?
Everybody who is on this live stream right now has read Of Mice and Men.
I'm waiting for the comments. Give it about 13 seconds. What's your best book you've ever read? Or tough question. Favorite book you've ever read?
I don't have a favorite book. The last book I read was Shoe Dog.
The Phil
Yes,
Knight book?
about Phil Knight.
Nike.
It was pretty good. Favorite, probably Catcher in the Rye. But I don't think I necessarily have a favorite.
Some Holden Caulfield action.
Great name.
Famous name.
Great name.
Read that book in a day. We had to do it for, I was a nerd, summer reading. Did you do summer reading in high school and stuff like that? You didn't have like summer reading assignments going into it?
No.
Wow, fuck. Maybe my, hey look, public school works, I guess. Look at me.
We both went to public school.
Yes. Yes, fuck yeah.
Jews in public school.
Screw the private schools.
Yeah.
Screw the private sector. My favorite book is anything from Hunter S. Thompson, but I really love Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail in 1970.
How about Wright Thompson?
Wright Thompson?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Isn't that the guy, the ESPN writer?
Oh, maybe. Potentially. The Koufax book about inning by inning through his perfect game is phenomenal.
Oh, yes.
The Life, Michael Jordan's book, not written by Michael Jordan, is phenomenal. Into Thin Air.
Sweetness, Walter
Minus
Payton's
the part
book, really good.
Where if you ever read, the guy who wrote Into the Wild also wrote a book called Into Thin Air about them climbing Everest. And besides the fact that there's a middle section where they get towards the peak of Everest, and there's about a 3-day period where almost everything he says, we have no idea if it actually happened because he was suffering from like this level of dementia that hits you when you're in the thin air and it makes you think very foggy, makes your thought process not so clear. And it wasn't like he was sitting at the top of Everest with a pen.
Like the effect of a Canelo overhand right.
Like the effect of a Canelo overhand right. Those are some of my favorite books. That's all beside the point. Do we have another guest?
Yes, unfortunately we're having technical issues, but we're
no worries.
We're going to get to him. Getting back to the fight real quick. David says, do you guys read any philosophy books like Plato? That is a profound no. I read Grapes of Wrath though, would recommend 9 of 10, says Terry Cotta W. Old Soul says, Jake Paulers don't play, I'm Jake Pauler. What the hell is going on with our comments section? Let's see.
Keep it rolling, keep it rolling.
I'm trying. David said, I've never read that book. Dude, now you know the ending. You know, funny story. I don't know if she's still there. She's still there? She left? What? You don't know where she went? Doesn't matter.
She probably took Carl, your child, out for a walk.
Probably. Girlfriend Daniela.
He leashes his kids.
Girlfriend Daniela does by far the weirdest thing that I have ever seen from any human being. When she grabs a book, she reads the last page.
That's awful.
That's terrible. That's like fast forwarding all the way to the end of the movie, then being like, oh, I know how it ends. Let me now watch the entire thing. I don't, exactly. Jacory's like, what the fuck? I agree.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be a thing. But reading the last page of a book rarely doesn't spoil anything. Reading the last page of a book rarely spoils anything.
Jacory's telling her, he's like, dude, he totally.
It's not like watching the last like 15 minutes of a movie where it ruins everything.
Can you take your camera? Jacory, can you take your camera? The camera's, fuck, it's not turned on. He just told her and she starts laughing at me.
Well, yeah, I mean.
But I mean, seriously, who reads the back page of a book?
Why would you trust him? He's just gonna spill everything within like a day and a half.
I'm not gonna spill it. I said one of the weirdest things that anyone could ever do is pick up a book, go all the way to the last page and be like, oh, so that's how it ends. Like, where's the drama? How do you want to know everything?
Do you
that
watch like Stranger Things, but watch it like episode 10, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8?
She Googles what happened. I'm sorry.
What do you want from me?
246 people are watching this right now. By the way, throw out your questions. Let's go. Rapid fire that shit.
USC came back and won, by the way, which is impressive. Because
pretty impressive.
Only Texas would show up against USC. They are actually, their defense is phenomenal, but they are.
Someone just let me ask you this. Godfrey Omawale, I think I said that right. Said, I'm just gonna tell you it's a no.
YDNS.
Can Triple G get Mayweather to fight him?
No.
No.
What the fuck, guys? Like that.
No. This fight was at 160. If he wanted to go to 154.5, maybe 157, he would have to drain his body. It wouldn't be a fair fight.
What are you justifying? Why are you even answering a question? No, if I'm not.
Hand in hand, Mayweather would never take the fight. It's too dangerous.
Thank you. That's
way too dangerous.
Answer. Besides the fact that, yeah, Mayweather's gonna take an $8 million payday after he walked out with 350.
By the way, as awkward as McGregor was, he landed punches, which also showed me that Mayweather looks his age, which is 40,
yes,
a man.
He looks his age. This is the one exception. He was able to cash in all the money he probably lost on bad bets. This thing is annoying me. I'm done with you. You're done. I'll put you in later. I don't want you.
You're just taking it out on the IFB now.
They made
Mayweather.
I want to point something out.
Please.
McGregor, who has never boxed a day in his life, what is
he was an amateur boxer.
You yelling at me?
He was an amateur boxer.
Who never boxed a day in his life, made 20 times the amount. Yep. 20 times.
The people wanted to see it, Jason.
I know, and that's my point being, is 20 times the amount. Mayweather made 60 to 80 times the amount that the fight that we as boxing purists all wanted to see. 60 to 80 times. You can't name a single fight in the world aside from a rematch with Conor McGregor that would be lucrative enough for Mayweather to take.
All right, I got it.
So if you want to throw out Golovkin versus Mayweather, or Canelo versus Mayweather, or Andre Ward versus Mayweather, or Lomachenko versus Mayweather, or Rigondeaux, or Billy Joe Saunders, or Willie Monroe, or fucking carve up some goddamn humanoid Terminator status robot half fighter Will Smith from iRobot.
What was the name of that movie that Robin Williams was a robot?
Bicentennial Man.
Oh my God. Wow.
Got it, boys.
Holy smoke, how the hell did you just remember that?
One big fan of Robin Williams, the late great Robin Williams.
Yes.
One of the few actors in the world who I think made, don't take this the wrong way, whose movies were like him and Jim Carrey, carried mediocre movies to greatness.
Yes.
Good Morning Vietnam, if with anybody else.
Could you say the same for Adam Sandler? Like Billy Madison, probably a mediocre movie,
no,
but the fact that he was in there made it like
here's the test. Here's the test.
Gold.
Very simple test. Replace Jim Carrey with Adam Sandler in all of Jim Carrey's movies, right?
He's good. Great.
And he's good. Replace Adam Sandler with Jim Carrey in the Jim Carrey movies. Bruce Almighty probably flops. Bruce Almighty is probably not even that great of a movie, but Jim Carrey can carry it. Robin Williams in not just, well, Bicentennial Man's actually a pretty sad movie. It actually has to do with like figuring out like how to handle being human, which is super deep. But Good Morning Vietnam, Mrs. Doubtfire as easily one of the most unbelievably funny performances I've ever seen. And I mean, like, look, I think this comes from the movie Argo, but I could be wrong. Like one of Hollywood's best ever.
What's
scams.
a pirate's favorite kind of tea?
I don't know.
Argo tea.
I think it's from Argo. Hollywood's greatest ever con is making people believe Good Will Hunting was written by two 18-year-olds.
Alrighty, he's good. All right,
I'll get back.
Let's welcome in our final guest this evening. It is, but let's give it up for him. Let's give it up for him. YouTuber Bryan, he's raising the motherfucking roof in 2017. That is a ballsy move, ladies and gentlemen. Bryan is a writer for Forbes. He was formerly, I believe, a Bleacher Report, correct, Bryan?
That is correct.
All right, fantastic. He also has a really awesome YouTube channel if you want to see some cool clips. Check that out as well. What's the correct URL for that? I don't want to butcher it here.
It's Franchise Play Sports.
Fantastic. Okay, so Bryan, from what you saw, we went off the rails. But getting back to Canelo and Triple G, did you have Triple G winning the fight, and if so, by how many rounds-ish on your scorecard?
I actually scored it a draw.
Okay.
I scored it a draw. I felt that I thought Canelo won the first 3 rounds. I thought Triple G looked definitely a little nervous, a little bit intimidated maybe by Canelo's speed. But I thought Canelo began to tire in the middle rounds, and I thought that that's when Golovkin began to take over the fight. But I did think the last 3 rounds, those flurries that Canelo was able to muster, is kind of what brought it to a draw. But that said, there were a lot of close rounds, and if Golovkin had been given the decision, I would not have been, outraged. But I don't see how Canelo could have won.
I think this is the lesser of 2 evils, essentially, which was that I'm in complete agreement with you. And I saw, again, using him as a source, Marcos Villegas of Fight Hub TV put on Twitter, he goes, it feels like a draw. And I sort of got that same feel as well. The one thing that I thought would happen is that boxing was going to boxing. And they were going to find a way to screw Gennady Golovkin once again as a 35-year-old from Kazakhstan to get screwed out of a decision. I thought Golovkin won. I don't believe that it was a 118, 110 like Adelaide Bird scorecard in favor of Gennady Golovkin. I know she gave it to Canelo, but just trying to provide an example here. Like, I thought that this was the lesser of an evil of boxing finding a way to pull a boxing, screwing a guy who it seems like won, and screwing many fight fans as well. So nonetheless, I agree with you. Do you want to see the rematch, or do you believe that Oscar, Golden Boy, and Canelo will try to find a way to just delay this by 1.5 years, 1.75 years, have Gennady age a little bit more, maybe try and get him to fight one more time and then fight Canelo?
I could definitely see that scenario playing out. I could see De La Hoya has a tendency to overthink things, or I'm not sure what he's doing. I thought he ruined the whole hype for this fight by being obsessed with the Mayweather fight.
Yes.
He couldn't stop talking about Mayweather McGregor long enough to talk about his own fight. So I could see him doing something kind of silly like that, as opposed to striking while the iron is hot. I think while most anyone with 2 working eyes wouldn't agree with Adelaide Bird's scorecard, the fact of the matter is even if she had scored it 115 to 113, we still would have gotten the same outcome. So however widespread or egregious her scorecard was, as long as she had Canelo winning, it still would have been a split draw. So, I mean, I would like to see the rematch sooner rather than later. But, it is still a business. Sure. And if both sides or one side believes that they can pump up the overall take on both sides by pushing it out a little bit and trying to create some more intrigue, you may very well see that.
Yeah, I think April, May is optimistic. I do, and I'm a pessimist, so next year around the same time. In general, and also worth noting, 118, 110 for Golovkin is equally outrageous of a scorecard. It has to just do with what she saw. We don't know what she saw. Was she sitting at the judge's score table? Was she 16 rows back?
Somebody came in through like bleach in her face in the middle of the
Fair point. Yeah, I think a lot of what we've discussed so far on this stream has to just do with this. It feels like a gut punch. It feels like a body shot from a champion boxer to have this outcome. But to be completely fair and objective, you're right. A 115, 113 score from Bird would have still resulted in a draw. And to Rick's point, coming from Fight Hub TV, correct?
Yes.
It felt like a draw.
Yes.
If it doesn't set up another fight, it just feels like such unfinished business. And on top of that, if we're gonna see boxing do the business thing, which is what we have to expect, because what, boxing's gonna change? Hey guys, after all this time, 60 to 80 to 100 years of relatively corrupt and a lot of conspiracy rumors, we've decided that February 14th, happy Valentine's Day. Here's Golovkin versus Alvarez again.
Right.
Like, it's just not gonna happen.
I mean, I think that both sides have the motivation to make the rematch.
There's the money
because obviously, cash rules everything around me. So it's going to. We're going to. I mean, where else? If you think about it, where else can Canelo and then in turn Oscar De La Hoya make more money? What other fight could he potentially have?
That's a good point.
That would generate more money than a rematch with Golovkin. I can't imagine Manny Pacquiao gaining, 7 pounds to move up to fight him at 154. I doubt that would happen, even though that would get both guys a lot of money. I mean, because ultimately it comes down to names. I think we all know Canelo would probably knock out Pacquiao in the 4th round and something very vicious like, but we got to look at names. And if you look, because that's what brings the money, because hardcore boxing fans don't drive the purses up. They don't drive the pay-per-view numbers. If hardcore boxing fans drove the pay-per-view numbers, we wouldn't have seen Mayweather McGregor just do nearly 5 million.
Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to point out, and I know people, the hardcore boxing fans, they don't like this. They don't like having this tainted Mayweather McGregor fight being brought up. But the context is important because the numbers that came through for that fight is estimated with a margin of error of about 10 million, just to show you how massive this number is. That over 200 million people watched that fight. Right. 200 million. When we're gonna probably see pay-per-view numbers for this in the 1 to 2 to
It'll hit
2 million.
2 million, right?
Between 1.5 and 2 million.
So just to show you the scale of what it was, and I'm talking about, look, the pay-per-view numbers alone did more than double. But here's an example of this, right? A lot of people were able to watch the Mayweather-McGregor fight on Instagram Live because so many people were live streaming it for other people to see across the globe. There wasn't one person Instagram living this fight. There wasn't one person Twitter feeding this fight. The streams in itself. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was $80 for this fight. And I think this was worth the $80 purchase. As a boxing fan, I'm an idiot. I'll pay $120 for a fight. I hope Oscar did not hear me. But in the case of wanting to get your product out, they gotta consider looking at these numbers seriously and start saying, hey man, maybe we gotta go back down towards a more reasonable price. If people aren't gonna pay, we need to drive these numbers up because in the end, 2 million is a great number for what's gonna be a great year in boxing.
Yes.
But is that gonna be sustainable? What is the remainder of the boxing schedule gonna produce? And like you mentioned, who is Canelo gonna fight? You said, is there a catch weight between Andre Ward?
No,
not possible.
No, there isn't.
There's none. No. It's not a possibility.
I mean, the best.
You talk about names.
The best division. I mean, Brian, we could probably talk about this. The best division in boxing right now is welterweight. The heavyweights are kind of making some noise because of Anthony Joshua, but the problem is Vladimir Klitschko just retired. So if they wanted to have some sort of catch weight between Andre Ward and Gennady Golovkin, it would probably be tough because Andre Ward is fighting at super middleweight, if not light heavyweight. The next fight for him is a clear-cut match with Adonis Stevenson. So I want to see that. I don't think we will. Nonetheless, for Gennady Golovkin, where exactly does he go here? And are there any improvements in your eyes that he could potentially make if they were to have this fight once again?
Well, I think Golovkin is what he is. And I think he proved to us tonight that, at least to me, because I wasn't necessarily on the Triple G train as much as other people because I really was very critical of his opposition. He hadn't really, before tonight, he really hadn't fought anybody unless you give Danny Jacobs a little bit of love. He hadn't really fought anybody. Tonight he fought an elite fighter, and what I was most impressed with was his chin and his stamina. In the 12th round, he was still coming with probably even more energy than he had in the first 3 rounds. So he is the real deal. I am willing to give him that now. I don't know where he goes. He's kind of in a bad spot though, because where else does he go from here? There's nobody else in the middleweight division that anybody cares about, if we're just being honest. I mean, nobody cares. So he's in a tough spot. He's definitely in a tough spot.
The Charlos are in there. Arislandi Lara is in there as well, who, by the way, I thought beat Canelo Alvarez.
Those guys are fighting at 154 though.
Right, but I'm saying if they wanted to have any sort of fight at middleweight, those could potentially be the guys. But the problem is, as you said, they're not attractive names. This has been the biggest payday for Gennady Golovkin. It's a big payday once again for Canelo Alvarez, who is Golden Boy's golden boy. So look, man, it's a conundrum. Like, where exactly do you go when you just had your biggest fight of your career? The only way to go is to try and force a rematch, but we already know what happened. We've seen this movie before. And you mentioned it previously, Brian, with Oscar De La Hoya. He bought time with Canelo Alvarez in order for Golovkin to just become not even damaged, just have that many more wars and that many more punches on his body, and just to give Canelo Alvarez that many more opponents to beat up and fine-tune his skills. The broadcast said something really interesting. One of the best things to ever happen to Canelo Alvarez was going up against Floyd Mayweather, which I agree with.
I disagree.
He went from being a slugger to an actual boxer. The biggest problem with Canelo's game plan is he continually finds a way to tire near that 5th round every fight. Aside from Chavez, who just stood there like a freaking statue, went in to get a paycheck and then left the ring, and hopefully we will never have to see him in a boxing ring ever again, because that was a shame. Nonetheless, we always see Canelo Alvarez, sans Chavez Jr., tire in the 5th round, tire in the 6th round. Yeah, he'll have some flurries here and there, and then he'll catch his 2nd win in the 8th and 9th. But those middle rounds, Brian, it seems to screw Canelo Alvarez whenever he goes up against a fine-tuned opponent. Do you disagree with that?
No, I would definitely agree with that, and I think that that's something that I don't think he'll ever be able to get past that, because some of that, I believe, has to do with just a person's physical makeup. You'll look at some other boxers in history, and they traditionally have an issue with stamina. No matter, I mean, if you saw Canelo today, he was ripped. I mean, he was ripped. He had not an ounce of fat on him anywhere. He was ripped, but another thing that contributed to his tiring was the fact that he was fighting a fight that really wasn't his fight. Canelo is a guy who does like to stand in there. He likes to trade. He likes, well, not necessarily trade. He wants to counter with the big right hand. But against this particular fighter, his advantage was to move more. But in moving more, it only sped up the energy dump. So I know he probably, if I was him, I would have been frustrated by mid rounds when he started to feel that shortness of breath that he probably worked to not have, but you never really know until you're under the lights. And I just think the stamina issue is something he's just going to have.
I think the stamina issue is an important point that you are making, because I think that one of the things we forgot to discuss throughout this entire live stream is Canelo's cockiness getting the better of him in rounds 3, 4, and even the first part of 5. And he
dropping his hands,
he dropped his hands a lot.
Golovkin
he danced
to
a little bit here and there. He was asking Golovkin to hit him, and he had him mentally beat through those first 4 rounds, I think. But what we stopped to do is we went, okay, well, that's only 33% of this fight, and that stamina really showed the latter 66% of the fight. To the point the commentary made about the best thing that happened to Canelo Alvarez was Floyd Mayweather. I thought that was the most blanket, easy statement any commentator could make. Why? Because you always will learn more from your losses than you will from your victories. That goes in just life, and sure, in boxing and in all sports. Let's also add to the fact that before, as I'm pulling up BoxRec just to take a quick look, before that, it wasn't like you can consider necessarily Austin Trout or Lopez or Mosley,
Josecito Lopez,
or Clinton or Gomez,
Shane Mosley was old.
Rhodes as people who were going to teach somebody who's been fighting professionally since he was 15 years old. After Mayweather, he ran through Angola, Lara, he potentially lost to, Kirkland,
I thought he lost.
Cotto, Khan, and to the point of being the most he learned, he probably learned equally amount as he did from Mayweather, as he did from Lara. Because any kind of close fight's going to teach you a lot too. So it's just, I thought it was just an easy statement, and it's just something that I think the commentator threw out there because, oh wait, how do we slip Mayweather's name into this broadcast?
It's sort of like saying on a football broadcast, like both teams are really giving their all. Like
it's like
no
the Phil Simms line of being like, man, I really, really like what the wide receiver did on that play. He ran fast out and caught the ball.
No, the Phil Simms is, man, I think everybody did a great job on that play.
True, that's true.
And there could be like something in the replacements where Danny Bateman just goes out and kills everybody. And Phil Simms would be like, man, everybody did a good job on that play.
That's a very good That's a very good Phil Simms.
Thank you.
He doesn't have a job anymore, and that's why.
That's not true.
He doesn't have a job anymore.
No, he's on the pregame broadcast.
That's not a job. I'm kidding.
Oh,
kidding. Well,
so full of
when
shit.
you get demoted from main broadcast to pregame, it means you lost your job.
Inside the NFL as well, I believe.
Look, he was a great New York Giants quarterback. Do not get me wrong, man. Do not get me wrong. Absolutely one of the most brilliant performances in a Super Bowl. Absolutely efficient mastermind when it came to it. Let the defense do their thing.
I agree. All right, Brian, real quick for you. When this rematch does happen, because I believe that it will, Gennady Golovkin's going to be 36 years old. Canelo Alvarez, can he learn from it? Potentially. But who would you have in the rematch if it were to happen, let's just say, most likely next May for a Cinco de Mayo weekend?
If it's the same Golovkin, and assuming he doesn't get old, I think he has his confidence earlier, and I think he walks through Canelo.
Okay. All righty, Bryan Mazique joining us here on the TYT Sports live stream to Canelo and Gennady Golovkin. Please do follow him on Twitter as well. It is unique Mazique, M-A-Z-I-Q-U-E. Bryan, thank you so much for the time. Let's do it again, man.
All right, I appreciate you having me.
All righty. So Robert Exel joining us, Bryan Mazique joining us as well. As we are about to sign off here, we appreciate everybody watching, getting at each other in the comments section, and being as savage as always. Jason Rubin, closing thoughts, sir?
I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. Closing thoughts. I look forward to rewatching this fight. I look forward to not reading your comments because the boxing audience is something. Although there's some wonderful ones. There's some wonderful nuggets in there.
Oh, wow.
I think my closing thoughts here are,
please,
the fight that we'll see next should be a rematch. And I think the most likely outcome, most likely date will be next summer. I think there's something about the summer blockbuster that could sell. And I think it's going to have to be a matter of patience. I think Golovkin won the fight by an inch. I could be swayed by a re-watching of the tape. My feeling is I'm going to re-watch it and go, oh, it was a few inches. It might have been a couple feet. Might have been a couple yards. Could have been a whole fucking kilometer.
I agree.
Just so I hit every different type of measurement. It was fun by all accounts. I don't think people should undersell it as not a spectacular fight because I don't think you're going to necessarily get as many spectacular fights as that. There's no saturation. It's a very thin pool of what we have left for big money fights. And not just money fights, I should really put it this way, as phone booth fights is what you saw. Because there was about 2 straight rounds where there's no reason you shouldn't have been on your feet. So, hat tip to both fighters.
Tip it.
And that's it.
What's the movie where like the older guy gets a chance after being in the minors? That
would be The Rookie.
The Rookie, yeah.
If you need any help.
Yeah, but like he doesn't go like all out. You know, it's just like,
this is Jimmy Morris. Are you going to be playing Major League Baseball? That's what he says there on the phone. By the way, Jim Morris was played by Dennis Quaid in that movie.
Dennis Quaid, that's what I was thinking.
Here's the funny thing. Look up Jim Morris. He looks like Danny McBride.
Does he?
Yeah, it's just.
All right, I'll look it up over there.
It's Hollywood being Hollywood. He was a reliever. He played like 3. He came back at like 38, 39 years old, and he played like 3 months for the Rays. I think he struck out 12 batters across 10 innings and didn't give up more than like 5 or 6 hits. He was a solid. He was a 1-pitch specialist reliever. They would bring him in for an out or two where they needed 98 miles an hour, and that's the pitch he threw. I don't think he ever even bothered developing another pitch.
It's fine.
But he had a dope mustache. He had a dope mustache, and Dennis Quaid did not.
So him not having the mustache is like in Moneyball when they don't mention the 3 big starters that were a big part of Moneyball.
They never did they?
It was integral, is what I'm saying. The mustache and the starters,
you
integral.
said Scott Hatteberg was an integral?
The name is integral.
The 16 players they traded over the next 5 years to eventually land 1 Cocoa Crisp was an integral.
That is correct. That is correct.
Josh Donaldson becoming the AL MVP. For
originally selected by the Chicago Cubs.
And eventually traded
Rule 5 draft pick.
Was it Rule 5?
Yes.
That's impressive.
My closing thoughts on this fight.
I can't wait to eat those Flamin' Hot Cheetos.
There.
No, the passwords. Don't show that. No!
All right, my closing thoughts.
So lively,
I enjoyed it. I think we all got our money's worth once again with a pay-per-view.
Sorry, you can go now. I'm just trying to open them quickly.
No, go ahead, eat one.
Do you want one?
God,
no. They look so gross.
I'm talking.
Go. You're good.
Try and not make noise when you eat that. This is how real we are on the live stream.
Can you hear it?
Of course they can hear it. They're both like, yeah, you idiot. We can hear it. Oh, Jacory's so done. All right, closing thoughts real quick, and then we're going to sign off. I think Jason made a very fair point that this was a 3-stanza fight where Canelo started very, very fast. His cockiness got in the way of him. It seems like having almost a near perfect game plan, because Gennady Golovkin, he looked like a chicken with his head cut off trying to find Canelo Alvarez through those first 3 4th rounds. The time that it really shifted was at the end of the 4th, nearly the end of the 5th, when Canelo started getting tagged more and more and more, when the jab started landing to set up everything. Throwing a jab is like throwing your fastball to start off the count. It opens up everything. It is the foundation of boxing, along with defense, of course, but from an offensive perspective.
You're right.
From an offensive perspective, you have to be able to throw your jab in order to do it. So Gennady Golovkin was throwing his jab at will. It was landing at will. Canelo Alvarez's cockiness got in the way of his own game plan, and he started eating punches left and right. Now, granted, there were many times that Canelo Alvarez started landing the over-the-top right that we discussed a little bit, going to the body as well, landing some stiff jabs of his own. Fine. It was Gennady Golovkin who not only controlled the middle part, but also closed out in emphatic fashion and was just screwed out of a decision and the biggest win of his career, where again, he did not get on the US airwaves until roughly 2012, 2013. It's a shame that he wasn't given his due, not necessarily because he earned it by not getting his due previously, but because he outclassed and outboxed Golden Boy's Golden Boy. He was deserving of this, and it is too bad that he isn't going to get this chance again, because I have a feeling that Oscar De La Hoya, who is a master of doing this, which is buying time so other fighters, the opposition to his fighters, are aged that much more and go through that many more fights. And it's a damn shame that we're not going to see this in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months, and we're going to have to wait until Cinco de Mayo of 2018 in order to see this once again. I think Canelo Alvarez's conditioning once again haunted him. Aside from the Chavez Jr. fight, as I noted on this very specific live stream, it is once again an Achilles of his. We have seen it in so many fights. Now, granted, in a lot of those fights, he'll take off rounds, but he'll find a way to knock out inferior opposition to him. See Kermit Cintron, see James Kirkland without Ann Wolfe, his trainer who established him to be the fighter that he was, the grinder and knockout artist that he was. So he was a broken fighter at that time, but nonetheless, the conditioning of Canelo Alvarez, and another reason why he probably can't compete at 160 again, is because he tires in rounds 5 through 7, 5 through 8, maybe even 5 through 9. He'll get his second win. He'll start controlling the first part of the round, maybe the first minute, and then he will just regress and allow you to come in, fight in a phone booth with him, and hit him. He did not deserve a draw. He did not deserve a 118-110 scorecard from Adelaide Bird. He deserved to lose this fight. And I hope that this fight happens sooner rather than later, because Gennady Golovkin is then going to be 36 years old. 36. There is only one guy who can defy time, and that is Bernard Hopkins, who Gennady Golovkin is chasing right now with 19 title defenses, as Bernard has 20. So I hope that we see it, but knowing how Golden Boy operates, we probably won't. So I believe that is it for us. We appreciate all of you tuning in here at TYT Sports. Please do subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and continue to come back, stroll the channel for our video on demand, but also continue to come back, because this is something that we're going to be doing for a lot of the big fights, is going live, reading a lot of your questions, and hopefully you guys watching as well. Have a great rest of the night.
I'm so tired, I gotta go bed now. Fucking tired.